Have you ever felt like you were in the wrong room, completely out of your depth? That's exactly how news reporter Elira Ellwood felt, stepping into the ultra-luxurious business summit. Surrounded by titans of industry, she was just trying to get a career-making story. What she found instead was a life-changing connection. Across the lobby, her eyes met those of the enigmatic Billionaire's CEO Viondra Crest. The world seemed to slow down. An invisible string pulled them together, a magnetic force neither of them could explain. Later, as Elira stood awkwardly by a grand pillar, a smooth voice cut through the noise. "You look lost." It was Viondra. Their brief conversation was charged with an energy that felt like lightning. Elira, usually so confident, found herself torn. This was Viondra Crest, a figure of immense power, famously private and unapproachable. Her journalistic instincts screamed interview, but her heart whispered something else entirely. As they parted ways, Viondra turned back with a simple yet game-changing invitation. Coffee. Tomorrow. That one question was the start of everything. The summit was a whirlwind, but all Elira could think about was that coffee invitation. Her formal interview with Viondra came at the very end of the conference. Instead of asking softball questions, Elira was direct, challenging, and insightful. She saw past the CEO persona to the woman beneath, and Viondra, accustomed to people who were either intimidated or sycophantic, was genuinely impressed. She saw a fire in Elira that matched her own. Their coffee date wasn't at some trendy, high-profile spot. Viondra took her to a tiny, hidden cafe, a place where she could be herself. And for the first time, the guarded billionaire let her walls down, just a little. They talked for hours, not as a CEO and a reporter, but as two people finding a rare and sterling connection. The emotional vulnerability was terrifying and exhilarating. The next day, a package arrived for Elira. Inside was a stunning antique compass necklace, impossibly expensive. It was Viondra's first gift, a gesture that was both breathtaking and deeply complicated. It was a sign of affection, but also a stark reminder of the vast world of wealth that separated them. This gift marked a shift. Their professional connection was now undeniably personal. Daily texts started flying back and forth, each one building on the intimacy they'd discovered in that little cafe. They shared details about their day, their stresses, their small joys. The emotional bond was growing stronger, pulling them closer with every message. Then came the next big step, an invitation to Viondra's penthouse apartment for dinner. The view was spectacular, but it was nothing compared to the tension and anticipation crackling in the air between them. The penthouse was another world, sleek, modern, and high above the city. It was Viondra's fortress. But with Elira there, it felt different, softer. Over dinner, they talked about everything and nothing. The pretense fell away completely. And as the night drew to a close, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows with the city lights twinkling below, the inevitable happened. Their first kiss was hesitant at first, then deep and full of all the unspoken feelings that had been building between them. It was more than just a kiss. It was an admission. In that moment, they both knew they were falling in love, and there was no turning back. Their love story, once a private secret, was about to go public. The annual masquerade ball was the perfect stage. Arriving on Viondra's arm, Elira felt a mix of pride and anxiety. The masks they wore couldn't hide the looks they shared, the way their hands stayed intertwined. They were no longer a CEO and a reporter. They were a couple, but going public brought a new set of challenges. The whispers, the stares, the stark reality of their different worlds colliding. The power dynamics were suddenly on full display. Viondra moved through the opulent ballroom with ease, while Elira felt like an outsider looking in. This tension bled into their private life, especially around the topic of money. Viondra's love language was giving. She showered Elira with lavish gifts, designer clothes, exotic trips, tokens of her affection that came with a hefty price tag. For Viondra, it was simple. She cared for Elira and wanted to share her world. But for Elira, who had built her life on her own terms, these gifts felt like a weight. She felt a sense of indebtedness, as if her own, more modest gestures of love couldn't compare. The conflict came to a head on Elira's birthday. She woke up to find a brand new luxury car parked outside, complete with a giant red bow. It was a stunning, extravagant gift, and Elira hated it. It wasn't about the car itself. It was about what it represented. She felt like Viondra wasn't seeing her, the woman who valued thoughtful gestures over grand displays. To Viondra, it was the ultimate expression of love. To Elira, it felt like a misunderstanding of who she was. The argument that followed was their first big one, exposing the deep cracks in their understanding of each other's needs and love languages. Behind Viondra's frustration was something deeper, a lifetime of building emotional walls. The argument over the car wasn't just about money. It was about control and fear. For Elira, love meant emotional openness, sharing your deepest fears and vulnerabilities. But for Viondra, self-preservation meant keeping those parts of herself locked away. This fundamental difference became the central conflict of their relationship. Elira pushed for more connection, more honesty. Viondra retreated, terrified of being hurt. The tension was immense, a silent battle between Elira's need to be let in and Viondra's instinct to keep everyone out. It was a battle that threatened to tear them apart. The breaking point forced them to a crossroads. Either they learn to communicate, or they lose each other forever. They chose to fight for their love. It started with small, difficult conversations. Elira learned to articulate her feelings without making Viondra feel attacked, explaining that her need for emotional intimacy wasn't a criticism of Viondra's generosity. She needed to feel like an equal partner, not a project. And Viondra, for the first time in her adult life, made a conscious effort to be vulnerable. She began to open up, sharing stories and feelings she had long kept buried. The real breakthrough came one night when Viondra finally shared the source of her deepest pain. She talked about losing her parents in a tragic accident when she was only 17, and how she had to take over a global empire overnight. She built her walls not out of coldness, but out of necessity to survive a world that would have swallowed her whole. In that moment of raw honesty, Elira finally understood. She saw the scared, lonely girl behind the powerful CEO. Her love for Viondra deepened, transformed by a newfound empathy. She realized that loving Viondra meant being patient, giving her the space and security she needed to let her guard down on her own terms. This new understanding changed everything. They weren't just dating anymore. They were building a life. The decision for Elira to move into the penthouse felt natural, a true merging of their lives. It wasn't about Elira entering Viondra's world, but about them creating a shared one. Elira brought her warmth, her books, her chaotic energy into the pristine, minimalist space. Viondra, in turn, started spending more time in Elira's world, visiting her favorite dive bars and meeting her journalist friends, finding joy in a life less polished. They were finally finding a balance, accepting each other completely. They learned to navigate the public demands of Viondra's career while fiercely protecting the private intimacy they had fought so hard to build. Their love story wasn't a fairy tale. It was better. It was real, built on compromise, vulnerability, and the powerful choice to love each other, complications and all.